I think everybody's had questions around the breathing, and this is the hardest part because everyone here has a strength training program where we're trying to improve performance. We're trying to improve, build muscle, get stronger. And when we talk about breathing, it's like that's almost the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. But I think in the grand scheme of things, for all of us, our number one goal is being able to get better at this in a skill set frame of mind, and then be able to do it for a really long time. So when it comes to longevity and your ability to progress consistently without setbacks, as we've literally talked to a few people about a few setbacks that they're dealing with, all of the protocols that we're going into for those situations are how do we create shape change in the body so we can make you more resilient and handle these setbacks in a shorter amount of time, because we're always going to have them, but then also become so efficient at this process that we can become more resilient in the face of those, so we have less setbacks, but then solve the problems faster. So the breathing, in my opinion, is the biggest piece of the puzzle, because we're all dealing with problems that are kind of further out, closer to our appendages, fingertips, elbows, wrists, things like that. But really, we're ignoring the root cause of those things, which is your ability to control the pressure in your body, right? Like, we're always thinking about shoulders and hips, but we're not thinking about rib cage and pelvis. And the only way that we can really change the shape of those things is by either inhaling air and expanding or exhaling air and compressing. That's really the only way we change like the fluid or the pressure gradient in our body. And that goes down into the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. So you've all heard me say the word stack 5 million times, but the reason why that's important is because if we can put the diaphragm over the pelvic floor and we use our pressure system, the breathing, to change that pressure, if we're in certain positions and we're biasing certain tension in certain areas, we can essentially put air and put fluid or guts in a certain position to loosen up tissues in a way that actually can create changes long term, versus doing like static stretching where you might get 5 to 10 minutes of relief and it comes back the next day. So this is how we solve problems long term, and we don't just put band-aids over injuries, or just try to get back to what they say, like getting you back to normal without looking deeper into the root cause. So if we want to make long-term changes in our system, whether it's thinking about pressure or thinking about us building new positions or patterns of movement, we have to be able to manage the nervous system. So just as we want to actually efficiently move the piston of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor and be able to achieve expansion, which we'll talk about in a second, we also have to do it in a very relaxed way. And that means we have to learn how to use the breath to manage the nervous system. And I say all this stuff in the masterclass, but some of it's so convoluted, I hopefully can simplify it. And if not, I hope you ask me questions. They're like, what the fuck did you say? And we'll go a little bit deeper. I'll try to simplify. So we have to do the breathing drills in the warm-ups, in the primers, and sometimes during your set, depending on how heavy you're going. We have to do it with the mindset that we're trying to get some movement, some balanced movement in the rib cage. And if you're squeezing every muscle in your body, you're trying to overly brace your core, and you're breathing with pressure, and you driving the air in and out, you're creating so much tension in your body that we're not able to get expansion and compression in a balanced way. So when you're warming up, you literally want air to be moving in and out of your nose, where you're questioning whether or not it's actually happening. And that's so hard to do, because if I just say softly inhale, everyone is thinking about trying to push air in, not thinking about where it's going. And that's just where we start, because we've never considered what our breath is like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. And that's really the biggest obstacle. Can you relax yourself enough to just let go of the tension that your body's already holding? That alone can change your mobility enough to, Matt, get your shoulder feeling better before you start your presses of the day, right? Or Philip, have a little bit better stack for when you're squatting so you can actually feel your abs. So number one, take all tension out of your inhales. If you're laying there doing the rolls, or you're doing your arm bars and your primers or your warm up, you actively want to let go of the sensation of inhaling. So it's actually slower. And that doesn't mean inhale more air. It just means inhale the same amount of air slower. So literally, you have to go into your training sessions, whether it's your tissue work or your daily mobility, or just warming up for, maybe you're going to max out in that set. Sometimes down regulating before the hardest gym session of the day is a great way to get in better position so that those sets can become more efficient. So what that means is, first of all, if we're trying to get into a stack and use our breathing to get into a stack and stay in a stack, we have to have 360 degrees of expansion in our rib cage and our pelvis. I rarely have that on a daily basis, and I'm pretty good at this stuff. So it's very hard to do and become perfect at, but that's just like strength training. This is a skill we're never going to get to a point where we're okay with and just stop, right? So this is going to be a part of your thought process. You're just going to get better at it. So this is the hardest part. Philip, you're asking about the breathing. It's probably mobility focused. It's going to be the same thing you're thinking about in the yoga realm when you're looking to decompress. We're still looking to try to be in a stacked position, rib cage over hips, and we're still looking to not chase sensations. And this is the hardest part, because you think about strength training, we're thinking about I'm activating a certain muscle, or I'm looking for a certain feeling or movement pattern that I'm chasing. With the breathing, it needs to become unconsciously fluid, and you need to be able to let go of those sensations to actually find what you're looking for. And if that's not overly philosophical for everyone on a Thursday at 4 p.m., we're not going to get any deeper than that. But you need to be able to let go of trying to feel your core or trying to feel the exhale going deep enough, because then you end up squeezing your glutes, or you end up crunching your six pack in a way that's not going to allow for expansion, right? Creating too much tension in the system. So really relaxing in a laying down position, whether I have you side lying or on your back, and feeling the pressure in the ground, and then trying to slowly inhale with no pressure in your nose and allowing your rib cage. See if the space between your shoulder blades can open up with your inhale. See if you can feel it underneath your armpits as the sides of your rib cage expand sideways. If you can't feel that, relax more. Let go of tension more. And allow your abdomen. We've all heard the zipper at some point now. If you have not heard the zipper concept, raise your hand. Do I need to go over that? Okay, everybody's good on the zipper. So another reason why I like the zipper is because of the way that you can connect your pelvic floor in the stack without squeezing your glutes. So the zipper is going from the belly button to like your shorts tag on the back, and we want to stay relaxed there. But when you're relaxing and you're letting go of that tension, I want you to think of your exhale starting at your pelvic floor, and you're actively zipping up from the pelvic floor up to your belly button in a way that's kind of allowing it to sink in without you pulling the abs in. And then now that you've zipped that up, I want your inhale to go everywhere else except for where the zipper is. And that's the hard part. So if you're, Philip, if you're doing your laying D2 or the X-band and you're trying to get airflow into the collarbone, a lot of people like the collarbone cue because they can think about inhaling up here. But if you're having trouble inhaling up here without it going all into the belly button or in the abdomen, which is the only place that really we don't regularly hold tension, right? Unless we forcefully squeeze, you can take either put your hands over your belly button and think to yourself, don't inhale into my hands. You can take a light kettlebell and lay it on your belly button and literally be like, all right, I don't want that kettlebell to move. And just that sensation alone, you not having to force a sensation, but just feeling as though, okay, now I can inhale into my lungs, then you start to feel your ribcage start to move. And that right there is a light bulb to go, okay, that's the sensation I need when I'm holding the band over my head and I'm softly inhaling. And I feel like I'm literally trying to expand into the sides of my ribcage with my inhale. Okay. And in a situation where we are trying to open up the upper rib cage, you also have to be aware of, like I said before, the tendencies that your body will have to try to cheat that. So squeeze your butt a little bit, pinch your glutes, right? Trying to hold yourself in the stack, or crunch your abs down and like squeeze into a crunch like this. If you're too forceful with that and you're too forceful with your inhale, sometimes too expansive of an inhale, you'll feel stretching in certain areas. You'll feel your traps activate. You'll feel stretching between your shoulder blades. Again, that's a sign that you're chasing the sensation or you're chasing the expansion. But if you can learn to let go of that and your exhales naturally find your obliques, then once the rib cage starts to become more mobile, then you can do less of the breathing drills to start. You have more mobility when you're going into your strength training sessions. But also the mind fuck about all this is that a lot of this has very little to do with movement. It has everything to do with your body's experience of your environment, whether that's at work or whether that's trying to downregulate before you go to bed or how stressed you are when you wake up in the morning. Your body's physiology is feeling for how you're interacting with the outer world. So if you're walking around with a tight rib cage and that forces your respiratory rate to be higher than it normally should, your brain's going to be like, yo, he's stretched